Great. So, indeed, my name is Fernando Nieto, and I will have the honor to chair this first session on international law regulating cybercrime. And okay. So we have 4 participants in this first session, and we are running late. So we will have to be a little bit tight with the time. So I think we can have about 10 to 15 minutes each. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So I will let you know when you have two minutes left. Okay. So first, I would like to give the floor to Professor Yong-Sung, from the Law School of Sungkyunkwan University. And well, I'm just going to go right. Well, let's go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to meet you in here, in wonderful city, Mexico City, and then in this kind of wonderful university called Max, and in this very pretty conference hall. I'm going to tell you about the cyber attack and the cyber warfare as a part of a customary international humanitarian law. And then I would like to explain about the applicability of a existing international humanitarian law to the cyber warfare. Let me take the.
You wish I can change. No, that was the one. You can stay here.
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, I will stay. Okay, thank you. I have a big and a loud voice, and then, however, I'm using microphones. And then this is my title regarding today's presentations. And then I'll show you the most famous pictures of our universities. As you know, that the Sungkyunkwan University has established in 1398. It means that our university has been about 600 years. Then this is the oldest building in our university. And then I hope most of you to visit the Sungkyunkwan University in the near future, and I will show you this building. And then I'm going to go to directly to the main argument. I think there's a cyber attack on the virtual infrastructure are already becoming widespread. And yet, while the threat of cyber attack has rapidly grown, the response has not kept pace. That's the problem. In order to face new and growing threats like cyber attack and cyber crimes, it is time to consider legal terms like armed attack, newly to meet the challenges of cyber matters. Cyber attack can be regarded as armed attack as well in the traditional international law. That's my main point. This is a global threat, may only be effectively met by a global solution by international community working together to design a new law or rules for cyber attacks. However, there will be many points, lacks of a common definition of the terms of cyber warfare. That's the problem. And then because cyber warfare has its characteristics like a covert nature, not easily traceable, and the private entities also can play, and are not fought or seen in the physical plane. That's the problem. It's an obstacle to draw international framework to regulate cyber conflicts. Furthermore, there would be no specific international treaty relating to the cyber warfare yet. It means that we need to make it with what we have, and then we must try to accommodate cyber war crimes under the existing international law. You have seen this movie. It's titled Troy. In this movie, you can take some pictures regarding international humanitarian law, because the leader of the Troy did not follow the the Athens army because they need some time to take the deaths and the wounded. In this movie, you can find such a kind of idea of international humanitarian law. It means that in the ancient times, there would be some thought regarding IHL. And then, what is cyber warfare? The offensive and defensive use of information and information system to deny, exploit, corrupt, or destroy an adversary's information, information-based process, information systems, and the computer-based network while protecting one's own. Such actions are designed to achieve advantage over military adversaries. And then the other scholars thought that cyber warfare means there would be some kind of exhaustive definition of cyber attacks may never be drafted. Walter Sharp, who was a general of the US armies, he said that cyber warfare operations are the same as if the adversary conducted conventional warfare operations, where the effect of the attacks are driving factors in determining whether an adversary used force or not. Furthermore, cyber warfare finds its root in hijacking. Cyber warfare as warfare conducted in the cyberspace. The terms cyber warfare and information operations are used, somewhat synonymous, although not completely correct. It means that the use of computers and the internet in conducting warfare in cyberspace would be regarded as a type of cyber warfare. You may think about how the cyber warfare or cyber attack may influence to the normal people's life in nowadays. In Dambaston operation during the Second World War, and then it would be comparable to the Roosevelt SCADA system hacked. In 16 May 1947, 2 of the 3 targeted dams were breached, causing significant damage. In 1993, if the gates had been opened, Tempe and Mesa, nearly 1 million population could have flooded by the hacking to the Roosevelt Dam. However, during the Dambaston operation, there was 8 bombers' crew lost, whereas Roosevelt Dam's SCADA system hacked, no lost. It is important. Cyber warfare or cyber attack may cause significant damage to the others or normal people's life. However, the conventional attack may cause significant damage. However, there would be lots of loss. It is very comparable. Such an incident demonstrates the power and the possibility of computer network attacks. If utilized in armed conflict, it would be a very important and very significant damage would be happened. I'm going to further about the cyber attack because we do not have enough time to explain whole ideas of my slide. And then, as I already mentioned that we need other sectors of international law in order to cope with the cyber attacks and the cyber warfare. As I already mentioned that there would be no international treaties regarding international humanitarian law which may be used in such a kind of cyber attacks. That's why I'm going to use existing international legal norms to cope with such a kind of cyber attacks. IHL usually seeks to regulate conduct in armed conflicts. Cyber warfare has emerged as the so-called fifth domain of warfare, where the mouse and keyboard, rather than the tank and the rifle, are the weapons of choice. Computer network operation is one of the latest capabilities developed in support of military operations. For the purpose of military operation, computer network operations are divided into computer network attacks, computer network defense, and related computer network exploitations. And furthermore, computer network attack consists of actions taken through the use of computer network to disrupt, deny, degrade, or destroy information residence in the computers and the computer networks, or the computers and network themselves. If not physical, fall out of the scope of existing international law, especially international humanitarian law. However, I believe that IHL was designed for method and means that are kinetic in nature, which is for armed conflicts. And then, existing IHL legal norms may be applied to the cyber attack or cyber warfare. I think expansion may be successfully adopted by many cases or by many scholars, because Common Article 2 of the 1949 Geneva Convention applied to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even if the status of war is not recognized by one of them. From this provision, we may apply existing international legal norms to the cyber affairs. And then furthermore, 1977 Additional Protocol 1 and 2 also may be applied to the cyber attacks. And then how and which IHL may be applied to the cyber attacks? Probably you may have heard about Tallinn Manual. Tallinn Manual has studied existing IHL legal norms may be applied to cyber attack or cyber warfare. Definitely, they agreed existing IHL rules may be applied to cyber warfare. Even though there are no treaty provisions that directly deal with the cyber warfare, this uncertainty does not mean cyber operations exist in a normative void. The international group of experts was unanimous in its estimation that both jus ad bellum and jus in bello apply to operations. And the manual reaffirms the applicability of the general principles of law of armed conflict to cyber operations as well, such as distinction, proportionality, discrimination, the prohibition on causing superfluous injury or unnecessary suffering, as well as the general rule on the protection of those hors de combat, medical and the religious personnel, cultural property, and natural environment as well. I have analyzed the whole provisions of Tallinn Manual. There are 95 rules examined in Tallinn Manual regarding international humanitarian law. 65 rules reached consensus, and the 33 rules reached consensus partly not agreed. Only 2 rules not agreed. It means most of the existing international law, especially international humanitarian law, may be applied to cyber warfare as well. Because of the potentially non-lethal nature of cyber weapons, the rules of IHL should evolve to accommodate. Such an evolution will allow the rule of law to guide the development of cyber warfare to ensure that civilian lives are protected in the age of cyber warfare. It is my whole idea that the existing international humanitarian law, such as Geneva Convention and the Additional Protocol of 1977, may be used to cope with cyber warfare or cyber attack. Accordingly, we have lots of difficulties to solve such a kind of situations regarding cyber attack. We need to interpret existing Geneva Convention to meet the criteria to solve such a kind of new phenomena such as cyber attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Indeed, quite interesting. How can we deal with this new form of warfare within the legal framework and with the legal tools that we have currently? I just want to stress one point that you mentioned in your presentation. I think is very important, given that we're in an international setting, that this is a global threat, and we need a global solution for it. So I think that's a very important point in your presentation. Okay, now I would like to give, by the way, I will leave questions for the, and also for the audience till the end, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, now I will give the floor to Ms. Yong Hao. Yes. Who is a PhD candidate. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jong-ha Oh. Today I will be presenting a topic in regard with cyber terror and cyber attack in international law. Before I move to next slide, I would like to thank your professor who attended and participated in this conference. The development of ICT and the expansion of its use have been provided a better lifestyle and accompanied by the criminal activity. Especially, the issues related to cyberspace has increased along with the use of the internet as a means and medium of international organized crime is an undeniable fact. As you see, the world is faced with fear of terrorism. Actually, the international community has tried to counter international terror after the late 1920s, but the worst of all, there is not a clear definition of terrorism that every state could agree. In these situations, each state begins to discuss problems in regards with terrorism. However, they failed to define this particular word terrorism. This conflict is making hard to establish a universal framework and legal regulation of terrorism. Due to the unclear definition of cyber terrorism, it slows down the process of discussion to this particular topic. With that being said, terrorism must be countered and treated under the international law incidentally. Therefore, the international community could fragmentally approach with the problem of terrorism. Under these circumstances, the majority of UN member states started to prepare the way of concluding an agreement. Through these kinds of processes, the rough common definition of terrorism could be formed. However, as you see, the definition is terrorism has not fully unified. As terrorism, there is not a clear integrated definition of cyber terrorism, so let's just take a look at the definition of cyber terrorism which some institutions have defined. According to these definitions, in order for us to be able to designate the occurrence of cyber terrors, there must be some sort of infringements of national security. Therefore, cyber terrorism can be defined as cyber attacks which infringe the national security. Computer technology has developed rapidly, and now computers are tightly connected to each other by network. These circumstances made it possible to attack national infrastructure using cyberspace. To protect their own cybersecurity, countries all over the world are maintaining their national legislation or establishing new legislation. The rigor correspondence with domestic law is not sufficient. As a result, cyber attack has to be argued on the international level. Before cyberspace terrorism has been fully recognized around the world, we will examine whether the conventional international law regarding terrorists can be applied toward the cyberspace. First, we will argue whether or not and when the cyber attacks violate Article 2.4 of the UN Charter. But as you see, the meaning is not so clear. So the point is understanding how force is interpreted in international law and arguing the possibility of cyber attack being included in the concept of force. The purpose of UN Charter is maintain the international peace over security and save future generations from the misery of war. This purpose of the UN Charter can be evidence of making the meaning of force only for military means. Especially in the adoption process of the UN Charter, there is not a try to expand the scope of Article 2.4 to economic measures and so on. But the UN opposed to this proposal, obviously, so we can see that at least the draft of UN Charter shows that the violation of use of force in Article 2.4 is progress on the military means. Actually, cyber attacks appears in bright ranges of form, size, and scope, so we cannot say that every kind of cyber attack could be a way of use of force. When the cyber attack is a core cyber attack is disruptive and can give similar or more damage than some kinds of military attack. And I also agree that with the development of science or technology, unexpected ways of attacks are happening, so we need to consider to widen the concept of use of force. Additionally, we can take a look at the forces of cyber attack on Article 39. The international responsibility can cause any potential negative outcomes if principle cannot be followed by states. Article 39 declares that it is not being invoked when there is not existence of any threat to the peace, breach of the peace, or action of aggression. So we can find that it is not restricted only to military attacks. So Article 39 of the UN Charter can be applied on a wide range, and that means cyber attacks can also be treated with this article. Article 51 declares of a self-defense expansion of the use of force. Self-defense is an exception provision against the UN Charter Article 2.4. As you can see, armed attack is the core requirement to invoke self-defense in UN Charter Article 51. This means based on the UN Charter, states can only invoke self-defense strictly when the armed attack occurs. The reason why there is a limitation based on armed attack for the invoke of self-defense is to prevent arbitrary interpretation and the abuse of self-defense of powerful states. Also, for this reason, self-defense can only come into action until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. As a result, based on the UN Charter, self-defense can only invoke when an armed attack occurs. So the point is whether cyber attacks can be regarded as armed attack. Related with armed attack, there is not explicitly provided regulation. Under the UN Article 51, they raise their voices with questions related to the unmerciful attacks by terrorists and states supporting them, and whether cyber attacks can be regarded as armed attack. As we have seen so far, the definition of force attack is not fully defined and cliché. As you see this slide, only restricting armed attack by use of traditional majority weapons at the present time is not reasonable, because at the time when the UN Charter came into the world, there wasn't a kind of problem like cyber attacks. It didn't exist, and for that reason, it could not be considered. But now the damage of cyber attack is very serious. So claiming that the self-defense could only invoke when armed attacks occurs, which is held by using traditional military weapons, causes a gap between the law and reality. Rather than allow states to use military forces for self-defense, it is the argument issue to have anticipatory self-defense. Under the Article 51, anticipatory self-defense has not been recognized and allowed by the UN. With that being said, the states are understanding that self-defense and recognize the using military forces toward the terrorists in order to protect their own states. If the anticipatory self-defense can be found and recognized, it will be understood in customary international law. Daniel Webster said, the anticipatory self-defense is legal under the self-defense in emergency states. Sometimes states under this circumstance understand the necessity of anticipatory self-defense. Many states recommend using military forces while and after the attacks has been initiated. Similar to Webster's law, states facing the unavoidable attacks by terrorists feels and expresses unfortunate feeling by other states. As a result, the cyberspace alone the room for terrorists to attack in different ways since they are connected easily around the world. Therefore, they must be protected and find ways to prevent future incidents. Additionally, not having the plan nor any prevention regarding to these problems is a serious issue must be fixed in the future. In order to develop the idea of future prevention, the constant research must be applied. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much for such an insightful analysis of cyber terrorism within the UN Charter framework. And indeed also stressing the point that still today we are lacking not only a unifying definition, but also a framework for preventing these attacks. Okay, now I will give the floor to Professor Julio Telles from the Institute for Legal Studies of the National University of Mexico.
Good morning, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here at the Colmex, even if I am Mexican. It's a really pleasure to be here in the Colegio de Mexico because it's a very recognized institution. I'm coming from La UNAM, so we have very good relations, and I'm very happy to be here with the Korean people. I don't know Korea, but I think it's very, very beautiful country. I hope one day I can visit your lovely place. Well, my presentation, I put something in Korean. I hope it's fine. Well, anyway, it's very important to say that this kind of problem that we are talking about is in the society is very important because normally we talk about the good things, about the computers, but unfortunately there is now very bad situations, so we have to be very, very carefully. And we have to talk in this moment with a global solution and cooperation. It's impossible to try to solve this problem only each country. We have to be very unified. It doesn't matter if you are in Asia or we are in America, we have to be together. Because if we are not together, we are not going to get anything. So I suppose, that this kind of encounter is very important because we have to be very, very close. Well, there is several criminal activities, as you can say. I don't know in Korea, but in Mexico we have many problems of identity theft. I suppose even in your country, no? Identity theft? So that is a really problem. Child pornography, I don't know, in Korea, here in Mexico, we have many, many problems about that. And it's very difficult. And the ransomware, the malware, etc. Well, anyway, we had to say that we have some kind of fraud and forgery that it's very important to try to regulate. And something that I suppose it had to be very close in all the countries is the fight against the child sexual abuse material, terrorism, the terrorism, that now in this point, the cyber terrorism. If we have very too much fear about the terrorism, now with the cyber terrorism, we had to be very, very concerned. I don't know if you remember that after the problem of the Twin Towers in New York, that Bush, the former President Bush, say, there is some war that we can see, but there is another wars that we cannot see. So we had to be very careful about this war that we cannot see. The invisible war, but it had many, several injuries. Well, the problem of racism is very strong now with the religious subject. You know, the past terrorist attack in London was only religion. It's a kind of religion. It is not only other type of problem. Well, anyway, we have the Council of Europe Convention of Cybercrime. Even if in Europe there is several cultures, they are together. So it's very important that we have to be together. The Europe gives that example, even if in this moment have problem with Great Britain, in the Brexit, etc. But anyway, we have to be very, very close, as I told you, and they had to pursue a common criminal policy. Because if we don't have that common political, we have many problems to try to fight this kind of cyber criminality. Well, as you can see, even if the Council of Europe, we have only 3 states who signed this council, but we have 43 states who ratified. And in this Council of Europe, we have other countries that they are not part of the Europe Union. There is one that signed, 12 ratified, and 9 who neither signed or ratified. So in this moment, we have 55 ratification or accession. Well, unfortunately, Mexico is in the side of the countries that Costa Rica signed. It's a few days ago it signed this treaty. Well, so in this pyramid we have the Convention of Cybercrime, the Budapest Convention. You are part of the Budapest Convention. I don't know why, I had to accept, I don't know why Mexico, even in this moment, are not part of this treaty, of this convention. So it's difficult to say. It's some kind of problem of the constitution, etc., but we had to be there. And we have to follow an assessment, this committee, and there is some technical cooperation programs, and maybe this is going to be interesting for you because it's a comparison of the strategy that you have in Korea and that we have in Mexico. So I suppose maybe it's interesting. You have, if I'm wrong, please you can tell me. You have the National Cybersecurity Master Plan. So you have 5 interesting points: establishing a joint response system of private, public, and military sector. You have the infrastructure about the secret protections, the detecting and blocking cyber attack at national level, and the problem of the cyber provocation. That is very interesting because you talk about cyber provocation. Even if not a cyber crime, it's a provocation. And I had to be very honest. You have your neighbors, and always you have the provocation. So I understand this term. See, the provocation, the cyber provocation. So it's very interesting that you have in your strategy. And building a cybersecurity infrastructure. Well, in Mexico, we are working to elaborate a national cybersecurity strategy, developing a policy that considers the cyber defense in charge of the armed force. So it's a national security problem. About the legislation, you have many things very interesting about the legislation because you have regulate the military secrets, telecommunication, the cybercrime, the e-government, and the infrastructure protection. But maybe the most important is the National Cyber Terrorism Prevention Act, your Information and Communication Infrastructure Protection Act, the Privacy Act, and the National Cybersecurity Management Regulation. We are still working to have a full legislation about this subject, but we are very glad to be with people like you because we have many things to learn about your experience. About the certs, in South Korea, you have a very, very effective capacity in the cert, in your certs, and you have the KIAR cert under KISA, work with the private sector. You have the KIEN cert with the public sector, and you have the National Police Agency Cyber Bureau since 2014. So it's very interesting because you work since 1997. So you have 20 years working this field. So you're not amateurs. You have many experience, and it's very important. And in Mexico, we had the response team to computer security incidents in the country, the CERT IMEX. In La UNAM, we have a CERT in La UNAM when I work. And we have also the National Critical Infrastructure. And we are very glad to have the Dr. Patricia. I had to say the scientific division of the Federal Police of Mexico is excellent. It's excellent. She's going to talk about that. I am academic, so I can say that. I am very objective, I am very neutral, and we are very glad to have this kind of division that work very, very fine. Well, anyway, we are with close collaboration with the CERTMEX and with some non-profit organization and another organization countries. Well, what happened with Mexico towards a national cybersecurity strategy? I don't know if you can see the numbers, but the number of consumers affected by cybercrime the last year, it was many people, 22 million of people. The financial costs are 5,500 million of USD. The most common cybercrime in our country are the mobile device theft, the theft of password, and the email hacked. And the percentage of users who cannot identify a phishing email is 30%, And the percentage of people considered to be able to determine that whether they are using a secure Wi-Fi network is 61%. And the person relying on your ability to keep personal information secured online is only 43 people. So the people here in Mexico don't know many things about the security vis-a-vis the use of the technology. And if you can see, it's difficult. We are in the 0 and in the number 1 only. And we had to arrive to the number 5, and we are very, very far from other countries, and we had to do something. Well, I don't know if you can see, for the judge, it's very difficult to understand the technical things. And for the informatics, it's very difficult to understand the law things. So we have to arrive in common terms. And this is the building we had to construct in the cybersecurity and the e-governance. We have many things to do. So we have to be together to work fine, because the criminals are in some place are winning the race, and we cannot keep this situation. We have to reverse, and I don't know if you can see, but thank you very much for you. So you are very kind to hear me. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Indeed, again, a point that it's in all 3 presentations so far is that this interconnectivity that we are living in implies that we have interconnected problems as well, right? And also interconnected solutions. And I just want to stress one point additionally, because in the first 2 presentations we saw the need for common definitions and common framework. But now we also see that we need to build capacity. And in that sense, it's also important to start learning from other experiences. And certainly in Mexico, there is lots to do.
Yes, many things to do.
Okay, and now the last presenter of this first session is Dr. Trujillo, already introduced, from the Scientific Division of the Federal Police.
Well, thank you so much. It's very proud for me to stay here. Thank you for the Mexican College. Thank you for my panel mates. And thank you for you, because you are stay here, create a new world with this specific topic. Well, we are going to share something about the regulation of cybercrime. First, I would like to take something about the federal police, then how this overall into the cybersecurity, the structure of the cybersecurity conception, the cybersecurity like a reality, and the elements that we must to consider into the cybercrime regulation, and the cybercrime regulation, and so a special program that create the government of Mexico is named the Police Cybernetic Homologate Model, and some reflections. Well, let me talk about sobre federal police. Federal police is a very great police in whole Mexico that had 7 branches. First is the branch of intelligence, then investigation, then anti-drugs, then federal force, regional security, gendarmerie, the most new, and the last, and the best, the science division. All are best. Well, into the federal police, we grow a lot into the cybersecurity. And as that's my colleague, Dr. Tellez said, we have the CERT. Which is the CERT? It's a very specific team to respond immediately to the cyber attack. And CERMEX is into the science division. Science division has 3 units: criminalistic, innovation and technology, and the more specific, criminalistic. And the three units work together. And in this way, we have the opportunity to have a total vision about the cybercrime. We have a very specific goal. We have the opportunity to create the cybersecurity like a way to Mexico. And in this topic, we work with 4 units: cybersecurity, social politics unit, the most important, the unit that has the responsibility to create the route to increase our capability and to support our financial unit. If we look the time and we look that we only have 37 years, 37 years that cybersecurity began to us. How can I say that? In the 80s begin the work of the cybersecurity. We only have 7 years. I realize this time. It's a very short time. And in this short time, we have the opportunity to see every kind of cybercrime. And we can the opportunity to see at the same time the damage. And we have very different kind of damage. That's why some authors talk about the trilogy of the cybercrime, but into the federal police, we believe that is not the trilogy. We believe that it's the tetralogy. And let me talk about this. Well, first, the first element is the society. We have a very new kind of man. We have a man that doesn't have time. We have a man that is growing into the 4th industrial revolution. We have a man that all day is thinking about that they have the opportunity to improve their money, their financial resource, but they don't have too time to reflect about their values. They don't have values in this moment. They only have the goal to get a lot of money. And in this way, have a new kind of vision of work. They try to rescue the most important that they feel that is important, the money. They don't think that is not the only that have the opportunity to make him happy. This is very strange. We only have the reflection about the money, and in this way, all the scenario is very strange because they don't recognize the importance of the value of the person. That's so gross. The other element is the context. We can talk about only one country. If we talk about the cybercrime, we talk about the war because it's a global problem. And it's a global problem because in this moment we don't have borders. We are living into the computer global world. And what about the cyber attackers? Well, they are so intelligent. They have a lot of creativity, but at the same time they are great criminals because the cyber attackers has the same mind like a criminals, but they have more capabilities and more skill. We hope they have a lot of creativity. And creativity means intelligence, and in this way they have a very high level of intelligence. That's very important for trying to understand how is the way that they attack. Well, at the damage, we can recognize 3 kinds of damage. The damage of the person, the damage of their property, and both. Because they are attacks that damage the person and their property at the same time. Well, into the South Mexico, we can detect 4 types of the appliance. First, the society has the opportunity to talk with us about the damage. And as you can see, there are a lot of, but not the total damage in whole Mexico, because the people doesn't want to talk to the police and say, hello, I have a problem, could you please help me? And this is not the reality, even we have this statistic. Well, what about the legislation? In our National Development Plan and our National Development Program, we create for the first time in the history of Mexico the cybercrime. The cybercrime is very important, this. And in this way, into the federal police create the first model to try to work together into the cyber unit. It's named Cyber Model to Defense. And the cyber model to defense has 3 elements. The first, prevention. The second, try to detect on time, timely detection. And the third, the most important, try to improve our capability and our skill. We believe that we have a global problem, we need a global solution. And in these ways, someday, Margaret Carby told, the most beautiful that we work into a team is that we never be alone. And in this way, the Federal Police of Mexico work together with a lot of countries, try to recognize the best practice, and in this way, try to produce a very good result. There are a lot of elements that we can consider into the regulation, but we believe, and we, in this moment, share with you the most important. First, try to recognize the good practice. Second, try to detect the best way to prevention. Third, try to work with timely detection. And third, try to improve our capabilities. And in this way, build a database, a big database. And in this way, try to share our information and try to describe what is the real scenario about the cyber attack. And in this way, try to build with all the people that is working into the defense of cyber attack a new kind to face on this problem. This is a very, very special representation of our model. In this model, in Mexico, we have 3 kinds of police: municipal police, estatal police, and federal police. And we want to have the same capability. This is the main goal of our model, that all the police have the same capability to face to the cyber attacks. And in this way, the last year, on December 20, we approved this model. And in March, we approved the specific report. And in the last month, we approved the specific pericial report. And in this way, we have the opportunity to work as they say in Chihuahua or Yucatan, in the north or in the south, in the east or in the west, because we have the same model. We have the same vision, as this is an historic event, because it's the first time that all the police, municipal, estatal, or federal, have the same model, have the same report, have the same opportunity to share information. That's the goal, and we are working, and we know that we want to get it in the short time. Over reflection. The regulations begins to recognize that the people today don't have don't have adequate measures to prevent cyber attacks. We must recognize that the cyber attackers are a person that have a very high level of intelligence. Third, we have to work together. If we don't have to work together, we don't have the chance to have a good response with the cyber attacks. And the most important, we have to create a new ways to share information with all the world, because this is not only a problem for Mexico or from Korea, it's a problem for all the world. We work not only for other person, we work together, and if we work together, we make all possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Indeed, thank you for your insight into the Mexican case and the very interesting work that you are doing at the Federal Police, and certainly to, again, highlight the importance of creating capabilities to face a fast-changing phenomenon that is cybercrime. And also about the importance of socializing the problem. It's not only about this is an issue that concerns society at all, and there is a lot of education that needs to be done. Okay, we have a couple of minutes, like 2 minutes, literally, for one or two short and to the point questions, if anyone has. I scared them with my... No? Okay. Well, if not, then I would like to thank our presenters. Thank you very much. And then we move on to a second panel, right? Right away. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I don't know who's going to be the next moderator. Okay, Professor Covarrubias. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.